Republican Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Very good to have you on the show. How are you?
Good morning, Mickey. Good to be with you.
Senator, you said that this president accomplished something last night that you did not think could be accomplished.
What was that?
He found a Lincoln quote that made you twitch. Protectionism. Yeah, I heard of protectionism, and Republicans all stood up, which shocked me, and Democrats all sat down.
Look, that was a curious moment. I think Democrats missed some opportunities last night. But I'll tell you, my assessment of the speech, I thought it was a very, very strong speech. I thought it was designed to be, and it was, in fact, a positive, unifying vision for the country.
Why do you think he did that? We're asking that question. Why now? That sounded, I mean, you followed this so closely, and you have your whole life. That sounded like an inaugural address last night.
Well, maybe the one we never got.
The one we didn't get, yeah. So what do you
It was
think?
a very different speech from the inaugural, and some of it is 6 weeks into the job. The weight of the job, anyone, it is overwhelming.
Right.
Absolutely.
There's a reason
Reagan,
why every president
Clinton,
goes gray in office. They age 20 years in 4 years.
Yeah.
You don't meet with the family of a fallen Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
And not have it impact you, and impact you differently when you're the commander-in-chief.
You know, Mika, we noticed, it's interesting, we noticed when the first time he came back from Dover, there was a look on his face that in the 10 years we've known him, we've never seen that look on his face.
It does seem, though, that this presidency is on this sort of delay. And it's the speech that we wanted to see at the inauguration, Michael Steele. It happened last night, I guess, in some ways. And, I mean, it had rough edges, but you saw the fingerprints of Bannon being removed, but still a little bit there.
Well, they're playing a little catch-up, and I think they are figuring out how Washington reacts to them and responds, and how they respond to Washington. And I think it's going to be important to see how he responds, particularly with Republicans in the House and the Senate. I think you make the point, Joe, with that line from Lincoln, using Lincoln, the father of the party, to promote protectionism is an interesting position for the party to find itself. How do Republicans in the House and the Senate reconcile with this nationalist big government republicanism that is looking to spend close to $5 to $6 trillion short term, and given the folks who came into the Congress saying that's not our game plan?
I'm not sure that is where this administration is going. I mean, I do think what we saw last night, one of the most important jobs for the president, is to paint a vision of where the country can go, and so people at home can see this is what we can do. And that, I think he did a fabulous job of. He did a fabulous job focusing on jobs and working men and women. This president was elected by the Reagan Democrats, by working class voters, by truck drivers and mechanics and men and women with calluses on their hand, and he spoke to them last night.
And you were elected, following upon Michael Steele's point, you were elected, and a lot of us were very concerned about big government republicanism. When Republicans controlled this town from 2001 to 2009, we did a miserable job on spending. How do you stop that train when you're talking about,
especially with all this
tax cuts? I love tax cuts. You love tax cuts. Defense spending? I love defense spending. You love defense spending.
Infrastructure.
But then infrastructure. I love you. We love all of these things. But I wrote a book, not to talk about my book, but I wrote a book in 2004.
But Joe's saying buy his book.
No, I'm not going to say the name. But this is it's a warning that in 2004 I was condemning my party for not making tough choices. Can you guarantee the small government wing of our party that mistake's not going to be repeated again?
I can guarantee that it still matters. We'll see. The details matter. On infrastructure, listen, infrastructure is a perfectly legitimate role for the federal government. It's important. Do we need roads? Do we need bridges? Yes. It matters a lot how it's paid for. It matters how it's structured. There are infrastructure programs I could enthusiastically support. If it's a $1 trillion boondoggle, if it's an Obama-type stimulus, I think a lot of Republicans would not be able to support that.
We pay as we go. Can you do that?
Let's wait till the details come out. I think they're working on that. But, the biggest question, how do you address, you were asking about the deficit and the debt. The best way, the only way really to address the debt is economic growth. If you're a numbers person, a lot of people at this table are numbers people. You look at the federal budget. Economic growth has a greater impact on the budget than anything else. Since World War II, our economy's grown on average 3.3%.
Right.
For 8 years, we've been mired at 1% and 2% under Obama. I told President Trump last week, repealing Obamacare, reg reform, tax reform, if we get these done, if the economy's growing at 5%, I said, Mr. President, you'll be reelected in a landslide. That is the whole battle to get to 5% GDP growth, and we can do it with tax reform, reg reform, and repealing Obamacare.
Let me ask you about the Affordable Care Act. Your colleague, Senator Cotton, from a neighboring state, said there have been Arkansans hurt by the Affordable Care Act, but he said there have been Arkansans who've been helped by it. Is that true of Texans, too? And if so, what do you say to people in Texas who have come to be reliant on the existing law?
The vast majority of people in this country have been hurt by Obamacare. And one of the things that I try to do a lot of is roundtables. I was just last week, I was in South Dallas, which is a relatively low-income part of the city, and was at Dallas Baptist University doing a roundtable of small businesses, included a number of minority small businesses. And they discussed that it's the biggest job killer in the country. Over and over again, they talked about not being able to hire people, laying people off, forcing employers into part-time work, that it was bankrupting.
You said vast majority hurt, and I understand your litany there. Are there Texans who've been helped by it, and what do you say to them as they're worried about your colleagues and you trying to change the law?
Listen, Obamacare was designed to have winners and losers. So can you find a specific instance of a person who was benefited by it? Yes. But if you look at it, there are about 20 million people who have some form of coverage that can be credited to Obamacare. More than half of that is under Medicaid. They were jammed into expanded Medicaid. Now, if you look at this, those are largely childless, healthy adults put into the Medicaid population. Medicaid was designed for the very vulnerable, for the disabled, for single moms. Now, when they expanded Medicaid, they didn't increase the number of doctors who take Medicaid. They didn't increase the service that is available. So what people on Medicaid are saying, their waiting lists have gotten longer. They're getting less services. And in order to try to benefit those 20 million people, what Obamacare did was messed up the health insurance for 200 million, for the remaining people.
So even people who benefited and feel like they benefit, you're saying under the Republican plan, they'll be better off.
I think let's take the Medicaid population. Medicaid produces terrible outcomes, produces much worse health outcomes than having private insurance. I want to see an outcome where a lot fewer people are on Medicaid and more people are able to afford private health insurance. I think that's better for people. And this is all about, one of the things I really liked that President Trump said last night is he focused on Obamacare. We've got to drive down the cost of premiums. Families can't afford health care. That's a message that resonates, and it resonates in the heartland.
All right, Senator Ted Cruz.
Thank you, Senator.
Really appreciate you being on the show. You're a good sport.
It is always fun. I'll note the last time I was on, I was with Lindsey Graham, and,
yes.
and you guys extracted an apology from Lindsey for a death threat. So I appreciate it.
I always try and help you out because sometimes I've been a little tough on you. We're not enemies, though.
No.
Absolutely not.
And how kind of Lindsey to
sorry about that Murdy thing. That's what he said.
Poisoning to not seem like agents for North
Ted
Korea.
Cruz.
That was very, very kind. Very kind of you.
Yesterday on Morning Joe, we spoke with the new chairman of the DNC.